we had a number of people who we sent it out and said, what in the world could I learn from the coroner about HOAs or leadership for that matter? All he talks to is dead people. Well, I'm going to give his introduction and I'll let him tell you what he can learn, but I've had an opportunity to sit on several of his lectures and he does a fantastic job. Some great experience around leadership, which is a large part of your role, how you work with your homeowners. So with that, I'll give his introduction. Michael Murphy is the coroner for Clark County and has been in this role since 2002. As coroner, Dr. Murphy brings 30 plus years of law enforcement public service experience to the position. He has worked for several municipalities in the Las Vegas Valley. Dr. Murphy has served as president of the International Association of Coroner and Medical Examiners, the Nevada chapter of the FBI National Academy, Nevada Sheriffs and Chiefs Association, chairman of the State of Nevada Peace Officers Standards and Training Commission, as well as advisory board member of the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program. He's a graduate of the FBI National Academy and has a doctoral degree in business administration from California Pacific University. Dr. Murphy has been a guest lecturer regarding law enforcement topics, meteorological death investigations, management topics, and a wide variety of motivational presentations to audiences around the globe. He was also featured in Vegas 7 weekly magazines as one of the most intriguing people of 2012. He can now add to his introduction, HOA speaker. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Murphy.
How's everybody doing tonight? Good. Good. I'm going to put my soda right here and spill it on this laptop, and somebody gets to buy a new one. So it works out perfect. If I were you, I would be saying exactly what you probably are saying, which is why would the coroner of Clark County be here to speak with an HOA association?
Looking for work?
I'm looking for work. You know, a couple of years ago, they were reading my bio at a presentation I was doing at a homeowners association on the east side of town at a senior living area. And as they were reading everything, and it said former this and former that, and 20 years here and 10 years there and 5 years there, and a gentleman in the back said, "What's the matter with you, boy? Can't you keep a job?" So I just want you to know that there's a reason why I'm here. And what it is, who thinks of bringing the corn? I mean, seriously, who thinks of bringing the corn? Let me turn this off so I don't, I'm on call and I'm going to turn this off so I don't bother you guys with it. Can you figure out how to turn that off? Okay. Here's the deal. I represent an organization that has 75 folks. I'm not a medical doctor. My background is law enforcement. Like I said, I have a doctorate in business. 75 folks. The turnover rate of the organization that I represent, by the way, I'm appointed, not elected. The turnover rate of our organization for full-time employees is virtually zero. Unless someone dies, doesn't happen very often, or they retire, we don't lose folks. And yet we do the hardest job that probably any of you can think of, which is to go out in the middle of the night and knock on a door and deliver a death message. And I believe that if you can do that with an organization that I have to represent, you can do that in almost anything. HOAs are not necessarily the most popular folks in the world. I was just talking with one of the attorneys in the back, and here's what the deal is. Everybody wants everything to be perfect. They just don't want you to bother them about making it that way. Tell me I'm lying. I specifically, my wife and I, my lovely wife is up here tonight. My wife and I moved to an HOA 2 years ago on purpose. Most people do until they get that notice that says their trees aren't growing right or the paint needs to be fixed or something. So the question is, what kind of a message do I have? And the first thing I want to tell you is, I believe that the financial storm has finally passed. Now I honestly want to hope that it's not the eye of the storm and we're in the eye where it's calm now. I honestly believe financially that the storm has passed to a great extent. And here's what I mean by that. I happen to have a pool in my backyard. It's about 6 foot at the deep end. I'm 5'9". So if I'm standing flat-footed, I can't make it. But if I move back just a little bit from the deep end, and I get up on my tiptoes, the water will come to just about right here. And I can survive. And I think that's where we are financially in the housing market today, and where we are as a community. We have gone through some of the roughest financial times that anyone has ever seen, except for people like my 88-year-old mother who survived the Depression. And I said to my mother at one point, I think we're in a depression, and she went, no. I said, well, what do you mean no? And she said, young man, I lived through the Depression. Now she happens to live in Siena, which is another group that has HOA. And I believe you guys service that, if I'm correct, because I think I sent my checks there. But anyways, she said to me, I know we're not in a depression because I still have cable TV and I'm not worried about whether I'm going to eat. And she said, and you're not standing in line like my father did to get a sack of flour so that we could have what they used to call daben, which is basically flour gravy. And I said, no, I don't think we're there. And she said, I don't think we are either. But I am going to tell you, in a time when I had a 14% reduction in budget as your coroner, and deciding what we were going to do about laying off, we laid off all of our middle managers, laid off not one frontline person, couldn't afford to do that. Got to still answer the calls, still have to deal with the death. And sometimes it was like deciding which kid was going to get in the lifeboat. But yet when we weathered that storm, and I believe we're out on the other side. Now what I hope we do as a result of that is that we learn from that experience. So I believe that the storm has passed, and here's the next thing. Just so you have an idea of what I do. Last year our office responded to 15,229 deaths in Clark County. We were involved in about 10,000 of those deaths. The rest of them are hospice deaths and things of that nature. It's about 42 a day, about 1.7 per hour. And it's our job to determine cause of death, the medical reason why someone ceases life, manner of death, the method by which they die, to identify the decedent, and then go out and do the door knock and notify the legal next of kin, and then to protect the property of the decedent. Now that's our job statutorily. It didn't change when the budget came. So I'm going to offer to you tonight some suggestions that you might want to implement in some of your life and in your business life and in what you're doing. But you are doing a thankless job. You've accepted the responsibility to make sure your part of the community stays appropriate, well-groomed, everything's right, people are living by the rules. I used to be a cop. You're kind of like the cop of the neighborhood. And it's been my experience that even when I was a cop, everybody wanted everybody to slow down but them. You know, we get a call and say, they're all speeding in the school district. We go out there and run radar. Guess what? Guess who we stopped every time? The mom's taking the kids to school. I didn't mean me, I meant her. And I know you're experiencing that. And on top of that, I'll bet you money that even with your own associations and your own boards, you have disagreements. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as we do things in an appropriate way. So that's what we do. That's what I represent. And so I might offer a little bit different perspective this evening than what you're used to. One of the things I want you to think about as the leader, as a leader in your community, and specifically as a leader on your boards, is that it's okay to march to the beat of a different drum. As a youngster, I did things that were a little different than most. Clearly, I became the coroner. That's a little different. I flunked biology, by the way. I might want to mention that. And by the way, I didn't just flunk it. The teacher called my parents and said, F is the lowest grade they allow me to give. That's how bad it was. I had a little bit different motivation in that point in my life. And my mother used to say to me, Michael, it's okay. You just have a tendency to march to the beat of a different drum. Being different is not wrong, it's being different. And we need to remember that we have to celebrate the differences and embrace the likeness in life. I'm just back from a 2-week trip to Tanzania, Africa. It's on the East Coast, by the way, not the West Coast where the Ebola is, so that everybody knows I'm not on a 21-day quarantine. And you know what? I've gone to countries all over the world teaching, and this is what I found out. We are all basically the same. We want to feed our families. We'd like to make life better for our families and for those around us. We talk about all the time that we need to think locally, or to think globally and act locally. Isn't that what you're doing when you're on an HOA? You're thinking locally about your particular group, but you're acting, you're thinking globally, but acting locally, because you're thinking about the whole community, but you're acting within your part of it. So let's talk about that for just a minute. There's nothing wrong with being different. So as you're going about this process of being on a board, you're going to have to swim upstream sometimes, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I would ask that you would do it in an appropriate way. The other thing is, we should not be afraid of storms because we've learned to sail our ship. We have all now weathered this financial process. As HOA board members, correct me if I'm wrong, and if I'm wrong, tell me right now. I don't mind, I can take it. You've had homes that you could stand in your neighborhoods and look down the street and see 5, 6, 7, 8 homes in foreclosure. You've had homes where you're trying to make sure you maintain the quality of the community, and you're telling the guy that lives 3 doors down from you, you got to paint, you got to cut your grass, you got to do your trim, you got to do whatever. And yet 3 doors down from that, there's a house that's in foreclosure that looked like it was a monster mansion. And they're looking at you going, how can you do that to me? And yet we try to relax some rules because we know people didn't have the money to keep afloat. We don't want more houses to go into foreclosure. It becomes that vicious cycle. So we want to temper ourselves a little bit. But I'm trying to let you all know, congratulations, you've weathered the storm. We're coming out the other end. And now as a result of that, and as I look around this room, I see a lot of more mature faces. As a matter of fact, I see a few faces that have more face to wash than maybe they used to. I know I do. I didn't get bald, I just got a bigger face. The storm is past, you know how to sail your ship. So let's do what we know we need to do in the manner in which we know we need to do it. Now what does that really mean? It's important for you to understand that people are broke, busted, and disgusted. They really are. They're at a point where they've had about all they can take. And they're hoping for a lot of things in the process, but they need to have a little encouragement and a smile and a friendly handshake and to know that they've got somebody that will listen when they have a concern. I would imagine, I'm not sure, but I would imagine that very seldom do you have somebody come to one of your board meetings to tell you how great a job you've done. They'll be more than happy to tell you what you haven't done. But it's one of those thankless jobs where you see people probably at their worst moments. So, I want you to know that it's important for you to stay positive and happy and motivated. Remembering that if you don't do that, it becomes literally like an emotional cancer. You get upset, you get other people on the board upset, the group gets upset, the next thing you know, the whole thing spirals out of control. So try to remember that people really are broke and busted and disgusted. And they're looking for a port in the storm. And you're it. And you can do what you need to do in an appropriate and positive way. The next thing is, do you lead by example? That's a pretty simple question. It's an ethical question. Do you make sure that your house is clean before you talk about somebody else's? Do you make sure everything's right in your area before you go pushing on somebody else? I would assume, I don't know if this is true, but I would assume if that's not the case, you hear about it pretty quickly. Am I right? You want me to paint what? Your bush is brown. I'm out there with a spray can going, mine's not brown anymore, it's green. Just kidding, just kidding, just kidding. I don't know if anybody's here from my association. So how is your organization represented? And are you not, in fact, it's just not FirstService, it's everybody. How are you represented? How is it when someone calls and files a complaint or when they do something on a computer, do they get a response? Are we making sure we're being responsive to those folks? And are we doing it in an appropriate way? I have always found it unique, and it happens in my organization too, that the people that have the most contact with our citizens in my office are some of the lowest paid staff that we have. And yet we expect them to be the customer service reps and to make sure they carry our message forward. Nothing wrong with that. But my question to you is, are we making sure that the message that they're giving is the one you want them to give? And is it appropriate and positive and uplifting, so to speak? And if it's not, you need to re-communicate with your staff. The other thing I want you to remember is this one, and this is probably the most important. Where does the buck stop? When I get phone calls from people who are upset, the first thing I tell them is everything that happens within our organization is my responsibility. Everything. I don't care if I'm here. I don't care if I'm home in bed. I don't care if I'm out working. It's my responsibility. You've got the right person. You've come to the right place. The buck stops at my desk. But it doesn't always make it my fault. If I don't address your concern, if I don't appropriately deal with the problem, now it's not only my responsibility, it's my fault. So I think sometimes we have to separate those two issues and make sure we understand that. And then if it were me, I'd go, what's this all about? Do you know who's who in your zoo? As a board member, do you know the strengths of every other board member? Do you recognize your strengths and weaknesses or areas? We're not allowed to say weaknesses in county government with HR. We say areas in need of improvement. Do you know those areas in which you need improvement? Do you know those areas in which you're not as strong as you could be? Maybe you're not familiar with all the rules and regulations. Maybe it's something that you need somebody to help you with. Are you afraid to ask for help? And who's who in the zoo that can help you? And the reason I mention this is because I think it's vitally important that as we're going about the process of doing business, that we get the right people in the right place rowing in the right direction. If you put two people directly behind each other and they're rowing, they go nowhere. You've seen it. You've witnessed it. You've watched it happen. So you have to make sure you know who's who in your zoo. And you have to utilize the talents and resources as you have them. The other thing I want you to honestly recognize in yourself, there are days you are not at your best. There are days that you're hitting on all eight. The way I try to do that is, on the days that I'm not at my best, I try to minimize my contact with staff so I don't end up putting my foot in my mouth. And on the days that I'm hitting on all eight, I do it. The other thing I've always said is sometimes you got to fake it till you make it. Which means if you're not having a great day, you got to pretend like you are, whether you are or you aren't. Because people have put you in a position of leadership, you have accepted that responsibility, and you have the obligation to fulfill it appropriately. Next, what are the three most important words in real estate? If anybody doesn't know this one, three most important words in real estate. We have any real estate folks here? Yes, sir. What is it?
Location, location, location.
Location, location, location. Why would that be, sir?
It determines the price of the house. It determines what we're going to pay for it. It determines the crime in the area.
Absolutely. The house that I moved from to the house I moved to, the biggest difference in those two pieces of property was location. The biggest difference. There were other differences, but the biggest difference. And one is valued at double the other, just because of location. People are living where they're living in communities that you represent because they want to be there. And they picked your place, just like you did. And you have an obligation to do the very best you can. So, in this, you remember I used to be a cop. So I'm making fun of cops. If there's a cop in the room here, don't get upset with me. If you notice this location here, it's the Massachusetts State Police, right next door to Dunkin' Donut. Location, location, location. That's a good way to be successful. You put a business in the right place. Well, if that's true with real estate, in management, what are the words that are most important? Three words. Communication, communication, communication. If in real estate it's location, in management it's communication. If you are not communicating, you are failing as leaders. And you'll notice there are all kinds of new ways now to communicate. Some of them I'm not very fond of. I have Twitter on my phone. I actually have a Twitter tag now. I think is it called Twitter? I tweet. Is that right? Sometimes I twit, but occasionally I tweet. So I actually have Las Vegas Lord something corner, and I can send out messages. I very seldom do because I'm afraid I'm going to say something stupid and everybody's going to go, "Oh, look, and he misspelled." So, I don't do it. But you can blog, you can email, you can phone, you can contact, you have meetings, you have relationships, you have all kinds of things, but it all comes down to what? Communication. And while we're communicating, let's remember that 70 to 80% of communication is nonverbal. So, I can spend all day long telling you how much I care about you. But if I don't sell it with my body language, it's not going to be believable. Let me see if I can give you a quick example. I think I see a lady back here that would be receptive to that. Let's go back here for just a moment. Yes, I'm going to pick on you. She just turned around and said, "Not me. Hi, how are you?" Good, Mike Murphy. Hi, it's nice to touch something warm. It doesn't have her out. I just wondered if you guys would pick up on that. Hey, listen, I'll be here all week. Try the veal. We're dark on Thursdays. Tip the wait staff. All right, so let's see if we can make this happen. I got people looking now. I'm going to look at you, and I'm going to tell you, I have to be really honest with you. I think that you are one of the nicest people that I've ever met. And that dress looks just absolutely wonderful. Did you buy it?
I did.
You did?
I did.
Oh, hey! I guess evidently I am a ladies' man. Sorry, honey, I didn't know. I don't know if I told you, by the way, I'm her arm candy. That's my job. But what was the one thing that was wrong about what I was doing? I was shaking my head. Where? No. I'm giving a positive message with a negative non-verbal communication, right? Okay. So, when you're dealing with folks, make sure you're making good eye contact and you're being sincere. Now, some of this you're going to go, "I've known this my whole life. Why am I sitting here listening to this guy?" Because first of all, it doesn't hurt to hear it. And it doesn't hurt to brush up on your skills. And the last thing is, seriously, how about let's make the appropriate contact with folks and really let them know that we care about what they're saying. You can have an open posture, you can have a closed posture. You know what happens. I've done it in meetings myself. You're talking about going up to the legislature. I spent the last 2 legislative sessions lobbying for the county because the county didn't want to hire external lobbyists because we didn't have any money. So I lived in Carson City for 5 months, two times in the last 6 years. And you know what I found out? You can watch the legislators. You know when they're glazing over and they don't care about what you're saying anymore. The posture closes, they start folding their arms, they flip up the laptop, they're doing whatever. And you're like, "We're done." Doesn't matter what you say at that point, we're done. They're done. You want to make sure you have a good message up there? Let me tell you what you need to do. You need to have a message just like is being talked about. And you need to have what they call the 30-second walk and talk. If you can't deliver one of your message points in 30 seconds or less, they're going to forget what you said. So, when they give you those speaking points, know them well. And you'll do well. Trust me when I tell you that. So, communication is the key. The other day, the power went out at our office. Now, that's not really a bad thing, as long as it doesn't stay out too long. Because refrigeration is king in our office. And guess what? We didn't have any email. My own staff is running around going, the email's out. And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Great. What are we going to do?" I said, "Get up out of your cubicle and walk down 2 cubicles and talk to the person you were going to email." I don't know. Pick up the phone.
Crazy.
Who would think to do such a thing? Remember, HOA folks, when you're dealing with the public, you're dealing with a wide variety of people that do not necessarily all communicate in the same way. I got really sideways with the department head over at the county a couple of years ago because that person communicated only by email. You can tell I'm a verbal communicator. So I'm getting nothing but email messages back to my phone calls, and I'm like, why is this person avoiding me? When I finally tracked them down and cornered him, I went, we got to talk. Why? I've answered all your questions. I want to talk to you. If 80% of communication is nonverbal and I get an email, a text message, I can read 100 different things into that. And many of our clients that we're dealing with, my clients as well as yours, are not accustomed to blogs, emails, and Twitter. They want to hear somebody. One of the things I fought till the nth degree and finally I had to give up was that when you call our office, you get a recorded message before you talk to a live person. And I fought that, and finally the county said the whole system's going there, it has to happen. So now you get this, hello, you've reached the Clark County Coroner Medical Examiner's office. Someone will be with you right away. Your phone call will be taken in the order. I hate that. Really? You're at the worst moment of your life and we send you to a recorded message? So you want to make sure that you're accessible to everyone within the process. And there's a lot of different ways to do that communication. So, while you're communicating, board members, while you're sitting in those meetings that for some reason seem to drone on and on and on, and it's only important to that person, that part of the meeting. It's kind of like when one of my kids graduated from high school, and I noticed that when other people's kids graduated, they got up and left. And I went, how rude is that? Wasn't everybody's graduation important? And you'll notice in a lot of these meetings, people show up, they show up for their issue, and as soon as they're done, they get and leave. Boy, that's how I show I care about you and what you guys do. And I'll be the first one to admit I've never been to an HOA meeting in my association. Because I think they do a good job and they don't need me to mess with them. Having said that, while you're listening for communication, are you listening more to respond or to understand? Think about that just a minute. Make sure that you're listening to understand first and then to respond. And then understand who the sender is. Because remember, I started this out with saying people are broke, busted, and disgusted. They'd like to have a little bit more for a little bit less. And yet we're going to tell them some things they're not going to want to hear sometimes. So make sure that they understand, you understand who the sender is, the person that's sending you that message, and understand that not everyone communicates in the same way. And please keep those things in mind when you're dealing with your folks. And then I think this is extremely important. Theodore Roosevelt said this, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. You can be the smartest person in the world, and if you don't care about people, none of it means a hill of beans, in my opinion. Do you care? And if I worked for you or with you or came to your association meeting, how would I know you care about what I have to say? How do you communicate that to me? Do you give me an opportunity to speak? Do you listen to understand? Do you listen to respond? Do you listen at all? Do you have a closed posture, an open posture? What are you doing to show me that my voice has value? That's what this is about. It's not just about kicking through the process, getting it done every day. It's about making sure that we communicate with the people that we're dealing with in an appropriate way. Next, keep calm, identify the problem, and fix it. There's an idea. Let's fix it. Now, you know, there's all kinds of business cliches. We can talk about problems are not problems, they're opportunities. And they are opportunities. But if I haven't learned anything else, I have learned that employees are more than happy to bring a problem off their back, walk in and dump it on my desk and go, have a nice day, and walk out the door. Anybody not had that happen to them ever, any time in their life? Are you kidding? People bring problems in like giant boxes of poo and drop it on your desk. And one of the things I require in our organization is that if you bring me a problem, you have to bring me a possible solution. And I refuse to own all your problems. You bring me a problem and I'm going to go, whoa, wait a minute, Daryl, this isn't just your problem. This is your problem. We're going to work on this together. This isn't dump land. This is work together land. So I want you to keep that in mind. So why do we feel the need to complain to those who cannot fix a problem? You ever notice that? I have employees that occasionally do that. Oh, I tell you what, they need to change what they're doing with, that coffee they bring in here. I just can't stand that stuff. I got one. We had some door dings in our cars. We drive these SUVs. I don't. I drive a little regular car, but the investigators drive these SUVs. There were a bunch of door dings in them. I was doing some inspections. And I'm talking about some pretty heavy door dings. And I went to the staff and I said, this is unacceptable. The county grants us the ability to have these vehicles. These are great vehicles. Everything's going okay. And we have nice cars. They're safe. They're clean. And yet you're beating the hell out of them with the car doors next to you. I said, it's inappropriate. So I brought them in. I took a buffer and I buffed out all the door dings and all the cars. I had them, people saw me do it. I just happened to use to detail cars as a side thing years ago. And so I buffed out all the cars. And I said to them, what do we got to do to fix this problem? Well, we've been complaining a long time about this. What's the complaint? And who have you been complaining to? Each other. Can each other fix it? No. I can fix it. What's the problem? The spaces are too small and the cars are too big and we can't get our equipment in and out. I said, well, you know what? There's 2 problems here, 3 problems. The first one is you didn't bring it to my attention. I could have fixed it. Nobody else seems to be able to. But I have the ability to fix the problem. Secondly, so we could make this less spaces and spread them out a little bit. I said, but what would have been the problem with backing the car out and then loading the equipment in it rather than bang the doors to load the equipment? And the look on the face was, I don't know. I said, and to this couple of employees that admitted to kind of abusing the product, I said, I know what your car looks like in the parking lot, and if somebody did that to you, your car, you would have a living fit. Why do you think you can't treat the taxpayers' cars worse? Why do you think you treat their cars worse than you treat your own? And so it was a matter of changing the mindset and making it. Now, what we did is we widened the spaces. We actually removed one space and widened the spaces. And the problem's gone away. So it was a twofold problem. One was awareness, and the second was solve the problem. But here's the deal. People all the time complain to the wrong people. So remember about the buck stop in here? Somebody comes in and files a complaint. It's something you can take care of it. Show them that you have an active ward. If we have the time to complain, why don't we have the time to fix the problem? It's the old thing, I don't know if you remember this one, when your parents used to say, you never have time to do it right the first time, but you always seem to have time to do it the second time. It's the same kind of deal. If we have time to complain, why don't we have time to fix the problem? So don't let people dump it on your doorstep. Make a partnership with them to get it done. And how do we unite a board? I'm assuming that on boards there are different personalities. And that you all don't get along all the time. I'm just imagining. I don't know. Maybe it's just in my world. I'm married and I don't get along all the time with my wife. Oh, will I learn? Either that or I'll get another one. I don't know. So I'll learn. Will I learn? I have figured out one thing in this process. Happy wife, happy life. I'm starting to learn that. It's taken me a few years. But here's the deal. We don't always get along, but one of the things I have learned is it's important to be respectful of each other's opinion. And always to say yes to your. But anyways, are we pulling together and not apart? And I just pulled my shoestring, and so this will be on the video. And I'm going to trip and fall if I don't fix it. Excuse me just a minute. This is cute. Okay, the rabbit runs around the tree. Down the hole. All right, so we have to pull together, not apart. Would you agree that we have to pull together? Sometimes we see this and nobody goes anywhere. Would you all agree with that? Now, compromise. What does compromise really mean? Anybody want to give me a definition of compromise? Sir?
Well, sometimes you do it one way, or sometimes you can do it another way.
Okay, then there is different ways to solve a problem, which you're correct. It's
Absolutely.
not only one answer. I've had others tell me that one of the definitions of compromise is nobody wins. But the reverse of that is, but nobody loses. Compromise is that everybody gives up a little and everybody gets a little. One way to look at it. How about that we agree to disagree? In an agreeable manner. That's the thing that we seem to forget sometimes, that we can agree to disagree in an agreeable manner. You see that Aristotle says it is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. Think about that for a minute. That you can go, you know what, let me hear your idea, let me entertain that thought. It doesn't mean that I have to accept it, but certainly we should talk about it. We should look at all possibilities. Everyone should have an equal voice. Everyone has an opportunity. It should not be, not an indifference to the lawyers in the back, but this was said to me earlier and I agree completely. It should not be that the vocal minority decides for the majority. And how do I know that? I used to be a juvenile officer. And I worked for a grade school, a junior high, and a high school. Spent most of my time at the junior high, believe it or not. That's where the problems were with the kids. I found out it's because that's when their hormones are going about ape crazy, and we spent a lot of time there. But here's what I found out from a principal. He said, if you ever want to get a change in the school district, think about how big our school district is. So I think it's the 5th largest in the nation. If you ever want to get a change in the school district, take 100 parents to one meeting and have them get loud and rowdy. And they represent less than 0.1%. But big voices sometimes get big change. And I think we have to make sure as leaders that we don't just let the vocal minority speak for all of us. We make sure that everyone has a chance to speak in an appropriate way. And then we have to change the way we speak. And I would strongly recommend this, that you move away from language that talks about mine, and get into language that says we versus I, all of us versus them. And what I mean by that, before you got on a board, you used to say they or them, and guess who they and them are now? You. I heard someone say me. You're right. They and them are now you. So now everybody else is going, they made the decision, them. No, that would be our daughter, wouldn't it? Don't say that. She says, don't go there. Them's going to do it. Anyways, they made the decision. You are they. So I try to remember that we need to talk in more inclusive versus exclusive terms. And we talk about we versus I, all of us versus them, our organization versus mine. It's not my board, it's our board. It is not my car, it's our car. It's not my office, it's our office. My office, the office I represent, belongs to the taxpayer. I happen to be a taxpayer. But it belongs to the taxpayers. And the people I work with or the people who work for us or the people who work for me. You ever notice that? You'll go, well, you know, this is the group that works for me. No, what I try to say is this is the group I work with. You want to be more inclusive in that process. So, with that, ask questions and talk to staff. Now, I know this is going to sound a little crazy, but if you're a board member and you don't know your fellow board member, I would strongly recommend that you write down some of these questions and just for fun, set with your board member or other staff that you want to get to know, either at FirstService or wherever you're going to deal with this stuff, and ask them some of these questions. You would be amazed the answers you get. And you go, why is this? And these are HR-approved questions, I might add. This will not get you in trouble with any HR legal stuff. All right? So I do this over at our office with folks when they come in new to me. This is after they're hired. I go, what's your favorite movie? What's your favorite book? What kind of music? You know, if you had, and people will go, oh, I just don't know. And I'll go, all right, let me try a different way. How about this? If you were on a deserted island and you could only have 3 movies you're going to watch for the rest of your life, what 3 movies would it be? And sometimes they'll go, I don't know. And once they answer, I always say, do you want me to tell you mine? And they'll go, yeah, I do. So I go, well, I don't know. No, Tombstone with Kurt Russell. The Abyss, I happen to love water. And The Gladiator. And The Gladiator is because my favorite saying comes from the movie The Gladiator, what we do in life echoes in eternity. So then you'll ask questions about music, and then you can't say, are you married, are you single, what you do? So instead you'd say this, in just one word. Family. And some people will go, yes, no, thank you, don't have any. You're not probing, you're just asking the question. Pets? And you'd be surprised, you'll find out, I got 3 cats, 2 dogs, 6 chinchillas, and And then I always ask this question, what do you think it is the best thing that we do in our organization? What is the best thing that we do, even if it's a brand new employee? And then, if I were a genie, what one thing would I do to change about what we do? And you're going to talk, when you're talking to your fellow board members, you're going to go, why would I want to do that? How about talking about something other than,
I think we better make sure they cut that grass down on the bottom of the hill.
just an idea. And what would you change about you if you could? And what would you like to do you are not doing? In respect to your job or the board. So as a board member, if you were on the board together, Mark, I might say, what's the one thing you think we should be doing as a board that we're not doing?
Paying ourselves.
Paying ourselves. All right, there's a good one. You know what? I like that. You got my vote. I'm running for board next time. Yeah. But that might be the idea. Or what should we do better? And then the other thing is there much communication between the different boards? And if there isn't, there might be a need to do that. Because consistency would be a nice feel. Just thought. Anyways. So, typical, when you ask an employee about problems, let me tell you what a typical answer might be. You'll like this. And some managers don't want to ask this question because they're afraid of getting the answer. By the way, I just got one. I went, what do you think? Pay. We want to pay the board. So the typical, you ask the question, you go, oh no, if I ask a question, they might bring up a problem. What's the problem? We don't get paid. So my next question is, can you legally get paid? And then the next question would be, what do you got to do? And blah, blah, blah. There's a whole process that you go through, right? Most employees honestly say, I don't make enough money. Honestly, if you ask most employees, they'll say, I don't make enough money. And my response to that is, I understand. And I would like for you to make as much money as you possibly can. But it's been my experience when people are complaining they don't make enough money, it's probably not that they don't make enough, it's that they live outside their means. And then what we try to do is guide them towards some financial assistance or some financial counseling about how to live within your means. It's funny that, I'll wait for a minute. I gotta wait till I get to that. So search for an answer. You want to provide employee assistance. You want to be happy with what you have. Maya Angelou, who's since passed, and it's a great loss to the world, I think. And I'm going to paraphrase for a minute, and I hope she would forgive me. You'll never be happy with what you have until you become satisfied with what you get or what you have. You'll never be satisfied with what you get until you're satisfied with what you have. Excuse me, that's the way it should be said. And so you have to be happy with what you have. You have to live within your means. And then you have to practice the Murph method. I'm a narcissist, so I came up with one in my own, that's my nickname, Murph. And it stands for Move Untapped Resources Forward. No offense to Starbucks, but I have employees who will complain they don't make enough money, and they come walking through the door with a $7 cup of coffee. And they can make it at home for 4 cents, and you can go to Sam's Club and get those little styrofoam cups and those little foamy things you put on top of it, and it make it look just like you got the fancy one, and the whole thing will cost you under a dime. I do the same thing, by the way. I spend money in places I shouldn't. Used to have a health club membership. That was a great idea. So that I can have to park in the back of the parking lot when it's 115 degrees and complain that I can't park up by the door and then schlep my stuff in so that I can get on a stair machine and then go sit in a sauna that's 115 degrees. I should have just stayed in the damn car. And here's an idea. What if I did my own yard work or cleaned my own pool? Or when I travel, I've made it a rule now that I never take any like moving tram or moving walkway, or if I have a chance, I take the stairs, and lost about 10 pounds doing it. Didn't need a health club membership. Got 700 channels at my house. I watch 3. There's resources that we can move forward. Sometimes it's not about how much you make, it's about how you spend it. To give you an example of that, because I just want you to know that I actually practice what I preach, in 2003 I should say, we came up with this idea at the office to put dead people's pictures on the internet. Now I know you're going to say, how does this have anything to do with business? I don't want you to think outside the box. I want you to blow the box up. I'm tired of that thinking outside the box. We're going to blow the box up. People's pictures had never been put on the internet. The internet was pretty new and up free. And I got to tell you, the media chewed me up and spit me out. I said, this is going to be the shortest career I've ever had. But I've been employed here less than a year, and they're going to fire me tomorrow. Even people within our own industry, they interviewed the Orange County Coroner's office, and they went, absolutely shouldn't do it. It's absolutely sacrilegious, the wrong thing to do, blah, blah, blah. God smiles upon fools or drunks. I won't tell you which one I am, but I tell you this. Within 24 hours, we got our first hit. Now, we don't put inappropriate pictures. But we would put pictures that are identifiable. 24 hours, we got our first hit. We started out with 167 people that we didn't know who they were. 24 hours. 40 hours later, we got our second hit. 72 hours later, we got our third hit. And we were off and running. As a result of that project and the hard work from the people that work in our office, the federal government said we should have a national site, and it's now called nameus.org. And there are thousands of missing persons. We have identified about 77 now, excuse me. Now, we have 204. We started out with 167. Guess what? The job doesn't go away. You pick up new cases all the time. But we have identified 77, and the nameus.org project came as a result of the work that was done in this community. So I want you to know I don't just talk it, I walk it. And that was an example of thinking differently and using staff to solve problems, and we used not one additional staff member, not one additional tax dollar. We didn't build any special units, and we didn't spend any extra money. We went to IT and said, can you put the website up for us? You know what they said? Oh, no, we don't have time for that. I said, okay, so a part-time employee said, I got this book called Website for Dummies. I think I can make a website. This is true story. This is true story. And the guy came up, the guy said, I'll put this website together, and he did. So I went back to IT and I said, I know you don't have time, but we've created the website. Will you just put it up on the internet? And they went, absolutely. And that's how we started. You do not have to spend money to solve problems. You just have to blow the box up. So with that, remember that in your part of this world, in this organization, you set the tone. I'm going to make sure I'm getting close here. I don't want to make sure I don't go over. I think you got about done. They say to me, when your butt gets tired, your bladder gets full, you're done. So here's the deal. You set the tone in the organization. Let me give you an example of setting the tone. This is Midge. Midge is a kind of Chihuahua, sort of. Now, I used to manage canine units, and I can imagine that most of these canine guys are pretty tough guys. You know, they're like, got me, got the dog, you know, and the dogs are always, the big dogs. Can you imagine the police chief calling this guy or gal in, and saying, are you committed to the canine program, officer? Yes, I am. Well, come on in, we've got a new dog for you. Always wanted to be a canine officer. Thanks, Chief. What's that? Don't worry about that, son. Are you committed to the program? What is that, Chief? Are you committed to the program? I need your commitment before we talk about anything else. Do you want to be a canine officer? Yes, sir, I do. Takes that little dog out of the carrier and sets it up on the desk and goes, here it is. Now that's a hard sell, folks. And yet this particular dog in the East Coast seized more drugs than any police dog in the history of police dogs. They found out they could put it on top of boxes on a semi and it could run all the way down and smell all the boxes and come back. And when it found drugs, it never tore anything. It's set down. At first I used to say, you used to pee on people when I found drugs. I found drugs, but anyways. But I want you to think conceptually for a moment. There's no reason to think inside the box. Let's remove the box, and now we think freely and come up with different ideas, and there's no bad ideas. So I want you to remember to take stock and verbalize. When you're having one of those bad days, they say the one best way to get rid of a bad day is to take a moment, take stock in your life, verbalize it to a close friend, and remember this: if you want a friend, you have to what? Be a friend. And that means if I come to you and I want to talk to you confidentially for a moment, it does not mean that you turn around and tell everybody about it. That's not what a friend is. Having said that, you're going to need to have an all-hands meeting once in a while just to make sure the message gets out here. I think that's what we're doing right now. It's kind of an all-hands meeting, right? And we want to celebrate big and small victories. Big and small victories. Don't just celebrate the big ones, celebrate the small ones. I always say that the biggest victory I ever celebrated is I had a full knee replacement. They woke me up and they said, "You're going to take a step, Mr. Murphy." And I said, "Oh, no, I'm not." They said, "Yes, you are." My wife's in the room. There's a couple nurses, and I got my little thing, and I got out of bed, and they said, "Take a step." And I took my first step, and the room erupted in applause. I think that's what it was. I could have been high on the pain meds. I don't know. And it erupted, and I went, "Hell, that was so much fun. I'll do it again," because I like applause. So I did it again. Sometimes we celebrate small victories, just that remembering we are not looking for perfection, we're looking for improvement in life. Don't be afraid to celebrate small victories, and do not pass up the opportunity to have a party. We have ice cream socials, we have 4th of July's, we have chili cook-offs, and because we have a 24-hour shift, we also have breakfast with the coroner so that our graveyard shift doesn't have to go to bed and come back into the party. We bring the party to them. Not bad, huh? Now, there's been a few questions because we happen to have a barbecue at the office, and we'll be barbecuing, and people will go, "What are you cooking in there? Ribs?" I mean, you know, hey, what are we doing? Not those ribs. You guys are terrible. I can't believe you guys would think something like that. We also make sure that we send cards to all of our staff. We have a happy birthday card and a happy anniversary for being here. You notice we're not really good at humor. What do you call it? An alligator in a vest, an investigator. But the point is that it's a handwritten note to every employee. At one point, I was the interim director of juvenile justice, about 500 employees down there. Now, I couldn't send one to all 500 employees. But I sent them to all my direct reports, and I encouraged them to do the same and to pay that forward and down into the system. Remember what I told you a few slides ago? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And this is one of the ways that you convey that message. Not only each other as board members, but to the staff that you're going to work with. Don't forget them. We happen to be accredited by 2 different organizations. Why do we do that? If there's any accreditation or any training you can go to that accredits you as a board or does anything, I don't know anything about that, I would recommend that you do it. Why? Because it not only shows your peers who you are, it shows that you're willing to raise yourself to a higher standard than others. With that, we also do a newsletter, and I know that I get HOA newsletters. I get my HOA newsletter. I keep trying to find out the guy who's letting his dog poop in the neighborhood, and when I do, I'm turning him in. Because I picked mine up, my little dog's out there going, and I'm standing there at 4:30 in the morning going, gotta turn on the flashlight on the phone and find it. But I do my job. And thank you, by the way, for putting the bags out. I appreciate that. Because I steal about 50 a week. But no, I don't actually. I don't. I really don't. 10 or 15 a week. So we do have a little newsletter. We always have a calendar that lets us know what's going on. And I want you to remember this little thing that happened. I'm about to wrap up, so thank you for your patience. These are starfish on a beach. And the way I understand it, I've never lived in a beach community. The tide comes in and the starfish get trapped on the beach, and the tide goes out. And they move so slow that they can't get back to the water and they die. So the way this story goes, there's an old man walking on the beach. I'll do my own man. Oh, I am doing my old man impression. I'm an old man. I am the old man. Here, I'll try. Little girl, what are you doing? And there's this little girl, and she's picking up the little starfish, and she's putting it back into the water one at a time. And the old man says, "What are you doing? What you're doing doesn't make any difference." They're all gonna die. She keeps picking them up, putting them back in the water. Picking them up, putting them back in the water. I said, what are you doing? What you're doing is not gonna make any difference. And she says, as she picks this one starfish up and walks over to this mean old crusty man and holds it up in his face, and she says, it's going to make a difference to this one. And she walks over and puts it in the water. Please remember that what you do can make a difference. And we want to make a difference in each of our own little pieces of the world. And remember this other thing, while you're gassing up everybody else's gas tank, who's gassing up yours emotionally? If you're not doing some things to have fun, you're making a mistake. You want to have fun at what you're doing. That doesn't mean that we have fun at the expense of others, but it means we enjoy what we do. We have a good time at it. And you want to make sure that in helping others, you help yourself, but you have some hobbies. And if I walked up to any of you right now and I asked you what your hobby is, and you can't tell me you don't have a hobby. Because if you have a hobby, you know it. It's a passion. And you should not use your cell phone to check out of life. How many of us do we know that do that? I'm on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I respond to probably 50 to 60 plus calls after hours. I very seldom miss a birthday. I've missed a couple of Thanksgiving dinners, but it's been proven that 80% of the time you will get where you're supposed to be and be what you're supposed to be doing. But don't make promises you can't keep. And remember that each day is a new day. I won't spend a lot of time with this because our time has gone, but I would tell you that this guy, he's now dead, but he had this saying that says, today's the day. He was looking for treasure down in Key West, and for 20 or 30 years he couldn't find it, and he went, if you give me some money for the boat, I'll put you on the list, and everybody went, yeah, it's just Mel, just give him some money, get him out of the way. He found the treasure one day. But every day when you talk to him, they'd say, hey Mel, how you doing? Today's the day. And somebody went, yeah, today's the day for 30 freaking years. You ain't finding nothing. And then he found it. And everybody that invested in him made millions of dollars. And my wife's favorite. Remember that it's not how many breaths you take, but it's what takes your breath away. Make sure you take care of you and you're having fun. Remember that the change is the only constant in life. And without rain, there will be no rainbows. I don't need to speak a lot about that. But I would like to pause here for just a moment and tell you, if you have negative people that are around you, do not allow them to rent space in your head. It is the most expensive real estate. We're talking about location, location, location. Trust me when I tell you that's the most expensive real estate you have. Don't let it happen. So here's our final tips. Exercise self-discipline. Practice Q-tip. When you have somebody come in and they let loose on your board, remember this. Quit taking it personal. It ain't about you. It's about the situation. When I go to McDonald's and I order a number 10, which is 2 breakfast burritos, coffee and a hash brown, I'll let you trade in coffee and hash browns for a Diet Coke. Not that I've ever done that very much. And I drive down the road and there's only one burrito in the sack. Or there's no, it's a sack for me, by the way. Some people call it a bag. Or there's no napkin. Now I'm wiping my face with the bag. Do you really think that as I drove through that $7 an hour employee went, ooh, there's Mike Murphy, he's the coroner. Let's do something bad to his order so we can make him angry? I don't think so. Why do I let others control my life and my emotion and my happiness and my sadness? Quit taking it personal. It's not about you. And that is it. Practice the Murph method. We've talked about that. Move untapped resources forward. If you're having stress, we got 3 more slides, I think. If you're having stress, here's what it is. The easiest way to get rid of it is to walk 20 minutes a day. You can do it in 30 minutes a day, and you can do it in 3 10-minute bursts if you'd like. Warm up slow, take a break when you need to. I've always said another way to get rid of it is to get on the Wii. If any of you have a Wii and you could do the little bubble bump thing with the water or whatever it is, but it just takes that. And remember what's important in life is my grandson helped me at the house. My granddaughter were making a cookie that helps me go into sugar coma. And this is my mother. Now she's 88 years old, and when she turned 80, we decided to start doing these cards. We do not create these. These are not Photoshopped. They're actual places that we've had her do things. Now she wasn't flying, by the way. We just loaded her up in the helicopter, took a picture, got her out. So that isn't the guy that got the engagement and the whole thing. Don't worry about it. Here she is out on the flight line with Nellis. She's 88 years old. She's loving life. And I want to be very clear about something. Of all the things that I am good in my life, It's as a result of her and the husband she was married to. My father's now passed away, and they were together for 58 years. Of all the things I've ever done bad in my life, it's because I didn't practice good self-discipline. I didn't have the ethical or the moral compass at that particular moment. I knew what to do, I just didn't do the right thing. And I have no one to blame but me. I think it's time we understand who we are. She loves life and she's having fun. So what's important in life? Loving people, not things. How many times do I have to say this before this is the message in your takeaway today? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And you will never be satisfied with what you get until you can be satisfied with what you've got. With that, unless you have any questions, my friend Jack from Jack in the Box. That's an autographed picture from Jack. I bet you guys don't have one of those. Right? You know Jack, right? Jack knows. Jack. Jack knows Jack. I got an autographed picture. I think that's pretty cool. With that, I would like to thank you so much for your time and leave you with this party gift, if I could. I said that my favorite movie is from the movie The Gladiators. It's not that it's a bloody movie. It's about camaraderie and understanding that literally this is the statement from the movie. What we do in life echoes into eternity. Everything we do has a ripple effect to the future. The question is it a positive or is it a negative? You have accepted the responsibility to be a part of your community to make our communities a better place to live. It is a thankless job. It is a needed job. And it is something that while you don't hear it very often, I want you to know we greatly appreciate those of us who are the silent majority. Please remember that what you do echoes into eternity, and it would always be my hope this day and every day in the future that what you do echoes positively into eternity. Have a great evening, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for coming. As was mentioned, it is a thankless job. Hopefully you feel a little more appreciated tonight. We hope that you took something home. We'll take something home with you about change. I noticed something interesting. All of you have been in a presentation and you're writing down change. Nobody's writing down. He's taking pictures of what's happening. So change happens all the time. We hope, again, that you've got some good ideas here tonight that you'll not only take back to your boards, but that you'll take back to life. So thank you. Appreciate you coming. Have a good night.